Welcome to Maximize Excellence, where exceptional leaders share leadership philosophies about research, discipline, habits, decisions, and experiences that help them shape lasting contribution and create extraordinary impact. I am your host, Lori Harris, and today we're exploring how our guest maximizes excellence every day. Let's begin. Today's guest is Tom Morris, public philosopher, pioneering business thinker, best-selling author, and someone who has spent his entire career bringing the wisdom of the ages into the challenges of modern life and leadership. For 15 years, Tom was one of the most popular professors at the University of Notre Dame, and at times teaching as many as 1/8 of the student body. A scholar, a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill, Tom went on to earn double PhDs from Yale University in philosophy and religious studies. Today, he serves as chairman and CEO of the Morris Institute for Human Values and is the author of more than 30 exceptional books exploring philosophy, success, achievement, character, leadership, and what it means to live well. His works include True Success, The Everyday Patriot, If Aristotle Ran General Motors, The Art of Achievement, The Stoic Art of Living, Plato's Lemonade Stand, and one of my favorites, The Oasis Within novel series, and many others. And to top all that, his newest book, The Frankenstein Factor, Monster Success and Massive Failures, an urgent warning for our time. This book draws inspiration from Mary Shelley's 1818 masterpiece to examine something extraordinarily relevant today. What happens when human intelligence, talent, ambition, and power exceed the wisdom and character necessary to steward them responsibly. And that is where I want to begin our conversation. To navigate this dialogue around and through the dichotomy of character, ambition, power, excellence, wisdom, and the good life. So while incorporating Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, we're probably going to incorporate Prometheus, Gilgamesh, Beowulf. You're going to hear him talk about Homer and Aristotle and Sirius, Stoics, Hume, Shakespeare, and neuroscience and AI. And for my side of the house, we're probably going to tune into human capability, human nature, and the matter of character. We will explore the human being inside the book, The Frankenstein Factor. So, Tom, welcome back to Maximize Excellence. It's truly an honor to have you with us today.
Thank you, Lori. It's great to be back. We're going to have some fun talking today.
We are. And so the first question I have for you, Tom, is you wrote an incredible epilogue in here in this book. And it really does speak to who are we becoming. So after taking us through Frankenstein, the ambition, achievement, the ego, power, the grandiosity, and the failure, morality, excellence, and then this ultimate flourishing piece. So you tell us, most importantly, it's a matter of character. Why character? What is it about character that sits upstream from everything else?
It's interesting that I've watched this for a long time. I got involved in helping business groups back in the mid 80s. And whenever people mentioned character, it was always like, okay, this is the icing on the cake. I mean, the cake itself is product quality, process efficiency, getting the right people involved. And character also, but character in the 80s and 90s was thought of as kind of an add-on, a kind of an extra, a luxury. Maybe it'll help you stay out of trouble, but it's not mission critical. Well, the longer I've worked with businesses as a philosopher, I've come to see it probably is the most mission critical thing of anything we can talk about, because if you get everything else right, it can all fall apart because of an absence of character. I was sitting with the president of one of the biggest financial institutions in the world, probably the most famous financial institution at the time. We were having dinner in New York City with his direct reports. And he leaned over to me at one point and whispered in my ear, "The only thing that keeps me awake at night is the thought that one person here is going to do one thing that takes down everything else we've all worked so hard to create." And it was only about a year later that that exact thing happened to one of his competitors and led to the big financial crisis of 2008. So I have seen character play out and an absence of character play out. And as a philosopher, I've come to understand this is why Aristotle thought it was so important. It's at the key, it's at the heart, it's at the core to any kind of sustainable excellence and success. So thanks for asking about that. I mean, as I wrote the book didn't start out as a book about character. I just thought, Mary Shelley had some great cautionary warnings for us in our time about how leaders and high achievers can go wrong, how they can do everything the success books tell you to do, and they create a monster success that becomes a massive disaster. I've got to figure this out. Why so many smart people do so many stupid and self-destructive things, not just in our time, but throughout human history. We got to get over this because of what's at stake in our time with the environment, with AI, with quantum computing, with nanotechnology, biotechnology. If we go wrong in the wrong ways now, we may not have a chance to get it right. So I thought, this is the time for this book to come out. I worked on it for 30 years, and it was only at the very end that I understood the whole book is about the importance of character.
And you make an important observation as well. So what we do comes out of who we are, but who we become is also a product of what we do. So does that mean that character is never really finished and that we're continually constructing that person who will make tomorrow's decisions? And so therefore, Tom, here we are, and we've got youth coming up and living and seeing and emulating and mirroring our adults. So
Yeah.
what about
It's,
that? What
yeah,
about that?
it's a good question. See, character, we tend to think of it as either you have it or you don't. It is what it is. But some of the wiser analysts of character have said we're always becoming. We're either growing and strengthening our characters or we're degrading our characters by each and everything we do. And no matter in what direction we're growing, in a positive direction or degrading in a negative direction, that can be turned around. And so people who seem to be growing in character can face a temptation, the level of which they've never faced before, and they all of a sudden start backing off, backtracking. Or people who've been degrading in character can hit bottom and it'd be a wake-up call, and they turn that around and start going in a positive direction. So it's always dynamic. It's never set for life. It's never closed. As long as we're here on this earth, we're moving in one direction or the other with character. Everything matters. There was a movie about near-death experiences, a bunch of medical students, decades ago, when we were first talking about people being resuscitated after the heartbeat goes away for a few minutes. And Kiefer Sutherland starred in a movie called Flatliners. And he volunteered as a medical student to be the person whose heart was stopped. And he was going to make scientific observations and take notes afterwards as to what he experienced. Long story short, later in the movie, he's on a telephone call and somebody apparently says to him about something. Well, that doesn't matter. And he says, no, don't you understand? Everything matters. One of my favorite lines from a movie. And when it comes to character, it turns out that everything matters.
So with ambition, when does something good become dangerous? And when ambition and achievement run ahead of wisdom and go entirely without it, that big trouble seems to nip at the heels. So when does something good become dangerous?
Yeah, I even start the book with this question on the
You
Frankenstein Factor, and because we live at a time where we're almost living an observation made by the Stoic Seneca. He said it doesn't matter if you're running faster and faster and faster. If you're going in the wrong direction, you're getting farther and farther from your true goal. And we live in a time where speed matters, right? And that's one of the things that AI is taking advantage of. It can speed up everything. Well, all right. but are we speeding up the right things? And do all the right things need to be speeded up? Or do some things need to be slowed down? Because we can have ambitions. There's a whole chapter in the book about ambition. Some people say it's the worst thing in the world. Some people say it's the best thing in the world. But like most things in the world, whether it's good or bad depends on how it's used, how it functions in a person's life. And with Victor Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's main character in her famous short novel, he was a good kid from a good family, grew up in a great neighborhood, had a great, very moral best friend. But he gets to the university in the big city and he feels low self-esteem all of a sudden for the first time in his life. He feels like maybe he's not good enough. Maybe he's starting behind the pack, So often the way people deal with low self-esteem is they go out of their way to try to be as good as anybody else or even better and maybe much better. And so, I'm going to beat all of them. I'm going to show them. I'm going to be famous. In fact, I'm going to be the most famous person in science forever. Okay, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to have to do something nobody's ever done. I'm going to create life from lifeless parts. I'm going to create life. I'm going to bring into the world an existing being like a human being, but bigger and taller and stronger and faster. And everybody will admire me forever for having done that. Well, very ambitious, right? We're told to set big, audacious goals, right? Well, that's a big, audacious goal for sure. But what was his motivation? His motivation, it turns out, was all self-focused. The grandiosity was all about himself, his own fame, his own renown in the world, his own praise, his status with respect to his peers. Mary wanted us to understand, Mary Shelley wanted us to understand with not only with this novel, but some of her other novels as well. This theme keeps coming up.
Yes.
We can do what look like the right things, but if we do them for the wrong reasons, things are going to turn bad. And so we can be ambitious in good ways and ambitious in bad ways. And sometimes when we're ambitious in bad ways, we whitewash that with a rationalization that involves self-deception. We say, I'm going to save humanity. I'm going to take humanity to Mars and I'm going to take humanity to other galaxies. And when really we're just desperate for self-esteem and we're willing to do anything that violates any law, any rule, hurts any human being, but we're glossing it over with a veneer of, oh, no, I'm going to do great things for humanity. We see it all around us. Mark Zuckerberg, just to mention one person, didn't sit around his dorm room in Harvard saying, I want to take down democracy around the world. He sat in his dorm room saying, I want to help people get dates and they'll all like me. I'll be the most popular guy on campus. That's what he was about. He was about his own popularity. He had no idea. He was unlatching the door to not only popularity, but actual fame and actual wealth and actual power to an undreamed of degree, so that what looked like a harmless ambition, I want to help people get dates, becomes this machine. And I try to make the point in the book, before Victor Frankenstein created this 8-foot tall creature that we call his monster, he had created the real monster in himself, in his own mindset. So ambition can go right, or ambition can go very wrong.
And it's not inherently bad. You actually describe it as something primal and sacred in us.
Yes.
And you encourage proper ambition.
That's right.
And you just gave us examples of where the line really is and where aspiration becomes obsession and enthusiasm becomes compulsion, etc.
Oh, yeah.
So can someone pursue the wrong goal exceptionally well? And with this question, Tom, it leads me on page 21. One of your best frameworks, I think, that you have, and it's in multiple books of yours, is the 7 C's of success. So can someone pursue the wrong goal exceptionally well?
Yeah. Yeah, I've often said about the 7 C's of success, and I discovered these back in the 1980s and wrote the book True Success about them, which we premiered on Live with Regis and Kathy Lee. And then I did a book, The Art of Achievement, about those 7. Yeah, there you go. And then The Art of Achievement was about the skilled usage of these things. And I use them in Plato's Lemonade Stand, and I use them in so many of my books. Art of Achievement, people have told me that was a life-changing book because it's not just about the ideas of the 7 conditions for success discovered by most of the great philosophers. It's about their implementation day to day, their relentless implementation in life. And you're right, people can do all those things, can check off all the boxes, but if they're pursuing the wrong goal, or if they're pursuing the right goal but in the wrong way, they can still have all their methods down, but maybe they're using improper means. You can use six of the seven C's at least to become a better assassin, to become a better thief, to become a better fraudster. Um, there's one condition on character. You can't use that 100%, but there are aspects of character like courage that even an assassin can manifest, right? So I don't want to make the world's bank robbers better bank robbers, the world's hackers better hackers. And so I always try to explain how the character condition, we need a clear conception of what we want, a strong confidence, a focused concentration, a stubborn consistency, an emotional commitment. We need a good character and a capacity to enjoy the process along the way. These seven conditions for success, seven C's, I call them, but we need to use them in the right ways for the right reasons. And that's what the Frankenstein Factor as a book helps us to understand. You can follow all the success advice out there, but if you're doing the wrong things or you're doing them for the wrong reasons, somehow it's going to turn bad. And Mary was surrounded by famous people, of celebrated people, and she saw the dark side of so much that they did, and she wanted us to understand. Her mother was the first feminist philosopher. Her father was a famous philosopher. Her boyfriend was the second probably most popular person in Europe at the time, Percy Shelley, the poet. His friend, Lord Byron, was the most popular person at the time. It's like having Mick Jagger and Keith Richards as your best friends or something. And then their friend was the first guy to write a vampire story, John Polidori. And these were like of the romantic age of writers. These people were the famous folks of their time. They walked down the street, everybody stops and looks. She saw the dark side and wanted to warn the rest of us. Look, look, look. It's not just about how much money's in your bank account. It's not just about how many people know your name. In fact, if you're doing the wrong things to accomplish that, or you're doing even some of the right things, but in the wrong ways, bad stuff is going to happen. And that's what Frankenstein's all
I love that. And bringing in that context matters. That time of life, that and her perspective from her environment with her people absolutely matters with this storyline, as well as the opportunity here for giving us frameworks and giving us content and giving us insights that truly do make a difference in a person's life. So
Yes, that's right. And women have often been our best analysts of this side of the human condition. Whereas the guys are running around saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. Look. In fact, it's often said, what the redneck's famous last words, watch me do this, and the women step back and say, whoa, wait just a second. Like Jane Austen observing the characters and manners of the people in her time, Mary Shelley observing people in her time. I like to think of Beowulf as written by a woman, because when Beowulf confronts this big monster and defeats the monster, then it's the monster's mother who comes after Beowulf, who's the much stronger of the two monsters, and he barely prevails. I could just see a woman, and we don't know the authorship of Beowulf, but I love imagining a woman author said out there, see, the female monster is the stronger of the two. And she shows how Beowulf's pridefulness sets him up for his own fall. And often we've had perceptive women writers, poets, novelists, playwrights, who've seen that twist in human character. I don't care how strong you are, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how talented you are. If you let hubris or pridefulness, arrogance take over your life, things are going to start going badly, badly wrong. And we need to take those warnings in our time while we still can.
I love that you bring that up. One of my, I do a lot of research on organizational effectiveness and human behavior in the workplace, et cetera. And I love Mary Parker Follett. And Mary Parker Follett was such an influence to Drucker. And so many people don't know that about
Mm-hmm.
her.
Mm-hmm.
And she, her research was on humanity in the workplace. And it's practical, it's foundational, it's universal, and it's timeless. And I agree with you. It's an interesting perspective is what it is. And I think it's valuable out in on the table. It is absolutely one of the perspectives we have to consider
Oh,
when we
yeah.
think about the whole.
And then even in New England,
Yeah.
Early New England, you get Emerson running around and his buddy Thoreau, and we know a lot of the other names surrounding those
Yeah.
guys. But Margaret Fuller was as good a philosopher as any of them, maybe even better, but nobody knows her name. And they're all these perceptive women, and Socrates in some of Plato's dialogues credits certain women as giving him fundamental insights about philosophical ideas. That's another thing I love about building my book around Mary Shelley's ideas, which then I go back to use her ideas to reread about 24 classics in world literature. And people have been writing me, early readers of the Frankenstein Factor have been writing me saying, I'd never read the Iliad, I'd never read the Odyssey, I'd never read Beowulf, but you've given me the essence. I never feel lost in your book. You give me the essence of the plot points in those stories, so that it's not a spoiler in any way. It makes me want to go back and read the originals, right? Hemingway's Old Man in the Sea, some things by Elmer Gantry, by Sinclair Lewis, Somerset Maugham's The Magician, classics of earlier decades of an earlier century that people don't even read anymore, but they're full of wisdom. That's what I love to discover.
And oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I can't even get the words out. You have a gift to, in all of the books that you write, you bring in various, especially in your novels, is what I'm thinking about in the Oasis Within. You bring in very key characters, Hoda, for
Yeah.
example,
Oh, so important.
who so important. So I agree with you there.
Yeah.
I want to move the conversation into the chapter where you speak about the problem, the path, and the paradigm.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you make an observation that when a path isn't taking us where we intended to go, our tendency is often to double down and speed up rather than reconsider the path itself. Why are successful people particularly susceptible to doing that?
Yeah, it's funny because Socrates gave us the basic advice long ago: know yourself, know yourself, know your starting point, know what the present problem is, because every one of us has some problem at present in our lives. I've never met anybody for whom everything is going great all the time in their present. No. So what is the problem we need to solve? What's the paradigm in the future where that problem has been solved and we have a better alternative? Okay. Once we understand the starting point, the end point, then we can plot out the path. The problem is really smart people often get so excited about really innovative paths, they lose track of what the actual problem was they were trying to solve, or what the actual paradigm is they want to arrive at. And they just immerse themselves in the process itself in such a way that they're no longer tracking, am I going where I want to go? They're just so excited about the technology of the process, or about the people they've gotten involved in the process, or about how much attention the New York Times and the Economist and Foreign Affairs and Fortune magazine are giving them. So it's a great temptation when you've launched a process that everybody's applauding, that everybody's paying attention to. You can lose the whole point of the plot line here. Where did I start? Where do I intend and hope to end up? And if you lose that, you can drift, because the process can end up taking you almost anywhere if you're not tracking along the way. Okay, where were we yesterday? Where do we want to be tomorrow? Are we at the right place today to go from A to C? It's just simple Zeno, divide and conquer. One of the great philosophers of the ancient world. Let's divide this up. If I want to be a certain place 6 months from now, where do I need to be 3 months from now? How about a month from now? How about a week from now? What can I be doing today and tomorrow? We've got to keep track of our progress, or the sheer momentum of the progress could take us to the wrong place. And again, Victor Frankenstein didn't sit around saying, okay, let me build a killing machine who'll eliminate from the earth everybody I care about. That wasn't part of the plan, but he got so immersed and excited about the process in which he was engaged and the fame that would result from this process, he forgot all about where is this taking me? And what kind of risk management should I do along the way? It's a great cautionary tale about risk management. It's about a great cautionary tale about not working in solitude in secret, which he did, which so many of our AI people are doing right now. It's about being transparent, involving other wise people. Now, every now and then we read an article in the Times or the Economist or someplace about the AI companies hiring a philosopher here or a philosopher there. They need to listen to more voices of wise people outside their tight tech circle, because they get so focused on just the process that they're losing perspective on the bigger issues at stake. So again, I hope the Frankenstein Factor will help with that too.
I couldn't agree more. And I want to bring this in because I come across it many, many times, and that is we often talk about accountability and we do not talk about responsibility. And I truly am an advocate for bringing in response. Let's talk about responsibility first
Yeah,
so that there can be great accountability. And I love this. You bring in the Horace, the Roman poet, and
yeah,
you bring in this quote: the greater the difficulty, the greater the glory. And often it's because we get so hyped, like you're saying, and we forget to be responsible and commit to that and act on that so that there is accountability across the board and that we can encourage that in others easily instead of it becoming dictative or authoritative.
right,
And
exactly. Responsibility is not a every now and then matter.
right.
Okay, it's not an episodic thing. Responsibility is a continuity virtue. Um, you can't just
Mm,
be responsible every now and then. You have to be responsible at every step of the way. You have to, and it's an inside out quality, whereas accountability tends to be outside in. The board of directors wants to hold the CEO accountable. The CEO wants to hold the head of sales accountable, the head of product development accountable. Yeah, but what about those folks themselves? Are they holding themselves responsible for tracking and evaluating the process at every stage along the way? Then accountability happens almost naturally if it's rooted in proper responsibility. And so we've just got a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming, a lot of people just concerned about the look of things, the legality, compliance, all this, but we're not growing internally the strength of true responsibility along the way.
and the one more thing I want you to touch on and tap into, because you move this to glory and honor.
Mhm.
And you begin to dive into this the morality and I love this. Glory is greatness and honor is goodness.
Yeah, yeah,
And so it's almost the natural organic outcome of this paradigm,
yeah, it
right?
is.
So if
It
we're
is.
attentive and we're committed and we're responsible and and we're a good steward of these things, glory and honor happens organically.
Right.
And
And too many people chase the glory with no attention to the honor. And
yeah.
so, and that kind of journey implodes, always implodes. So you get notoriety, you don't get the kind of reputation you wanted. But if we understand, and that's why you have people like Lord Acton saying, power tends to corrupt, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And he says in the same letter, famous letter, that hardly any great men are also good men because they're chasing the glory without the honor. And we have to understand that unless these two things go together, I mean, honor is important, but needs to have power attached to it to some extent to actually do good in the world. Uh, Glory, nothing wrong with that. It's all about often power and magnificence, but if it doesn't have good attached to it, it's going to become monstrous, right? So the ancients really help us to calibrate this in our lives. In modern business schools, MBA programs have not focused on topics like this. It's just been about the metrics. It's been about how to measure everything. It's about the technique of process. But the Greeks had two ancient words, techne and telos. Techne was about your tools. And telos was about your purpose, your goals, the meaning of what you did. And so we've in the modern world, in modern business and politics, we focus on the technology of it all, but not the telos, the teleology, the purposiveness, what's the good we're trying to accomplish in the world. The Greeks understood both need to go together, and we need to return to that understanding, I think.
So you talk here, power alters how we perceive ourselves. It alters how we perceive others. It definitely plays a role in risk and in reality itself. How does a powerful person protect themselves from becoming the person they once would have warned others about?
Yeah. We need honest people in our lives, not just yes men and women. We need honest people. And it's well known that during the Middle Ages and Renaissance period, some high ranking figures in government and the church would have somebody follow around saying, "Remember you're mortal. Remember your mortality. Memento mori." It is an interesting thing that we can lose our sense if we don't have nobility and humility together. I end the book, If Aristotle Ran General Motors, with the two keys to leadership greatness: nobility, a sense of important, wonderful, valuable purpose, and humility, a proper sense of self, and that we can learn from anyone, and we can never do anything totally alone, which Victor Frankenstein didn't understand. When these two things track together, nobility, humility, wonderful things happen. But when they don't, bad things happen. So we have a lot of ways of learning the same lessons. And one of the things I try to do in the Frankenstein Factor is shine a lot of different lights on these things, like power, the corruption of power. We've had a lot of best-selling authors in the last 5 years say, no, Lord Acton had it all wrong. Power does not corrupt. Power reveals. It reveals who you are. Okay,
Yes.
if it reveals something bad, then how did that bad come to be? They never say anything about that. And then actually, we've got a bunch of recent neuroscience, fMRI technology and research. We've got a bunch of other stuff that does show Lord Acton was right, that it's not just power itself. For example, suppose I'm Prince and the king dies, but I don't know because I'm in another part of the world. I have the power of the kingship. I have a lot more power over something, but I don't know about it. It's not going to affect me yet. But it's power that you're self-aware of. And as long as that self-awareness exists, and you don't have to be CEO of a global company. You can be, my wife worked for a dentist in New Haven. He had a very small dental office of 4 or 5 people, but he had the sense of grandiosity of his own importance, his self-importance. The power made him less empathetic, more impetuous in behavior, less likely to think through long-term consequences of decisions, riskier behavior, just as cluster. They say it's akin to temporary brain damage. And as long as you think you have the power, and when you start to lose the power and you're aware of that, this can change. You can be healed from this temporary insanity, so to speak. So how do you guard against that? Well, most people don't even ask that question. How do I guard against the vicissitudes of power? They don't ask that question, and so they end up being headlined in the newspaper or being marched off to prison. We need to ask the question, and we need to take the advice of a lot of great wisdom literature. Surround yourself with wise people. Surround yourself with people who are not going through that problem, who can early spot it in you, and who can say, hey, Dave, or hey, Catherine, I think you're being a little risky with recent decisions here. Do you think maybe we need to kind of talk about that? So if you have people in your life who can check you, that's one of the best things imaginable. Too many people don't.
You're moving right into where I want to go with you. But before we go into people in partnership for a shared purpose, I definitely want to ask you and have you talk to this. And it's that sometimes the system rewards Frankenstein
It
behavior.
does. It often does, because you get the immediate results
Yeah.
that bring in immediate revenue. You're beating the competition. That's all the metrics are looking for, right? The metrics are just looking for the money, the status in the industry, stuff like that, where your pecking order is right now. And if you're getting all the right numbers, you're a rainmaker. They don't care how you're doing it. They're going to turn a blind eye to how you're doing it. In fact, that was a real problem before 2008. In a lot of industries, people were turning a blind eye. In the mortgage industry and a bunch of other industry, people turned a blind eye, and it ended up destroying everything. So, if we can bring out these recent cautionary tales, and one of the problems is everybody's got an exceptionalist mentality. Okay, it won't happen to me. Yeah, it happened to them, but it won't happen to me. No, we're all in the same boat. So we need to convince ourselves and each other, look, these cautionary tales of the past, we could be one of the cautionary tales of the future
Yeah.
unless we take seriously the cautionary tales of the past.
People in partnership for a shared purpose
That's
leads
one of my
me.
favorite formulas of all time.
Oh, and it is. It's something that speaks deeply to excellence.
Yeah.
And I truly think in the book here, in the Frankenstein Factor, trusted collaborators can offer additional perspectives to provide both guidance and guardrails in any difficult enterprise. I will even say any difficult situation or circumstance. And often it's when we begin to derail
Hmm.
or when we begin to lose that level of confidence or when we begin to doubt or get any kind of density within our thoughts and our heart begins to get emotional in density. I really think this is where partnerships and being able to realign and getting into excellence again plays out. I want you to open up and talk about where your the three models of excellence that you talk about: competitive, comparative growth, and collaborative.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also describe excellence as rising from a mere potential toward development or toward that developed maximized actuality because of great partnerships, because of
Right.
intentional partnerships.
Yeah, the etymology of the word excellence is just to rise out from, to rise above, and we tend to think of that very simplistically as rising above the competition. Like when I was a college student, am I going to be the best in the class, right? Am I going to have the highest GPA? Then when I get out in the work world, will I sell more than anybody else? Will I make more than anybody else? And the competitive model of excellence, whereas you hit excellence, all you need to ask is, am I better than everybody else? Then you're excellent. Right? Well, what if everybody else is really bad? I could be mediocre and still be better than them in a certain field, right? And so that doesn't mean I'm excellent. Secondly, if you think of it competitively, uh, that can change over time, right? I could be best today, but then I'm not, I could be the best in a field of comparison without being my best. And so somebody can pass me if they're becoming their best. Well, wait a minute. Maybe there's more to excellence than just competition. And then that's a Western model, kind of a European and North American model. We got this Eastern model from Asia and the Middle East, where it's this what I call the comparative growth model. Am I better today than I was yesterday? Will I be better tomorrow than I am today? So it's not about competing with other people. It's not about comparing yourself with other people. It's about comparing yourself with yourself over time. And this is an improvement in a lot of ways over the competitive model, but it still has its limitations because I could be growing from bad to mediocre to average. And it doesn't mean I'm excellent just because I'm growing. I have to pass a certain point in that growth to be really rising out of my potential into my actual realization of my potential. And so where I was searching for another model of excellence, I came up with what I call the collaborative model, where you incorporate elements of both the other two models, but you try to go beyond just me, me, me. Am I better than others? Am I getting better than I was yesterday? And you can even do that on an organizational. Are we better than others? Are we getting better than we were yesterday? What about a broader sense beyond the individual person, beyond the individual organization? Am I partnering and collaborating up with others? Or is our company partnering, collaborating with others in such a way that together we can do things that individually we never could have done alone? We can rise to levels of excellence we never could have done alone. Maybe that's the doorway. And so I go back to Aristotle and discover, hidden away in his book, The Politics, my simple words for the formula for human greatness: people in partnership for a shared purpose. People, plural, not the individual like Victor Frankenstein alone in his laboratory. In partnership, a certain kind of relationship, not an adversarial relationship, not even just a cooperative relationship, but a collaborative, bringing the best of who you are and taking the best of what the other person brings and creating something new together for a shared purpose. So you're not just chasing your own agendas. You're in the same room together. You're supposed to be in partnership, but you're basically after different things. No, you have a shared purpose. People in partnership for a shared purpose. That's very powerful. And the organizations and people in our time who understand that outpace everybody else, and they do things that others can't do. More of us need to move to that. And again, it's an ancient perspective from Aristotle. He saw it, I think, in the Greeks before him in the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Iliad, I think, is about the power of partnership, and the Odyssey is about the power of purpose. People in partnership for a shared purpose. So Aristotle wasn't pulling it out of thin air. He was pulling it out of the collective wisdom of centuries of thinkers who went before him and experienced the human condition in its worst and at its best. And so here he gives us what I make into a simple formula: people in partnership for a shared purpose. If Victor Frankenstein had had partners in his endeavor, somebody to say, whoa, slow down here, Victor. Maybe
Yes.
we need to consider some risk elements of this picture, some risk management, mitigation here. He didn't have anybody to help him in that way. Even the ship's captain, the way the novel is done, the story of Victor is told by a ship's captain who had the same grandiosity. He's writing letters to his sister about this guy he met, Victor Frankenstein, and his story, his remarkable story. Walton wanted to be great too, but in one part of his letters to his sister, he says, I wish I had a real friend, because a real friend gives us what I call guidance and guardrails. A real friend will encourage us in the good we're doing and pull us back when we're about to step over the line. Victor had nobody to encourage him, build his self-esteem in a healthy way, and he had nobody to call him back when he started to step over various lines. And the guy telling the story kind of innately realizes we all need that in our lives, and it's something Victor didn't have.
And earlier before we got on and started recording, you and I both talked about, and you brought up Lance Armstrong. And I often wonder if Lance neglected to allow people, as he grew in success and as he became more popular and as he achieved more, how narrow he got in
Yeah.
his focus. And
He didn't let anybody in. And that's the thing. When I wrote a book, The Art of Achievement, the original version of it in the mid-90s, I told the story of Lance Armstrong as a story of great achievement, because that's all we knew about him at the time. Come back from cancer, this remarkable thing of turning what seemed to be a weakness into a tremendous strength and winning over and over and over and over the top Tour de France title. And then I was getting ready 25 years later to do a second edition, a 25th anniversary, silver anniversary edition. And one of my really good readers of the book said to me, oh, you're going to have to take out the Lance Armstrong story, of course. And I said, oh, yeah, right, because it was revealed about all his drug use and of all the lying and deception and all this. And I thought, yeah, I'll have to take that out. And I thought, whoa, maybe I don't take it out. Maybe I'll leave the story in. And I mentioned all the positive things that we were talking about concerning Lance in the 90s. But then I show how it all went wrong. And he became, rather than a paragon of excellence, he became a cautionary tale about excellence. And one of the things you mentioned, Lori, is so important, that the farther he went in his life, the closer and closer he brought everything to just himself. So he didn't let anybody else in on the secrets, what was really going on. It was just like Victor Frankenstein. It was a solitary, secretive adventure for him, involving a lot of things that he didn't want anybody to know what he was doing, right? Because he was cheating. And we see that all too often in our day, and people rationalize their secrecy in various ways. They really don't want anybody telling them, no, that's not the right way to do this. No, I think you should rethink what you're doing. They don't want to be slowed down at all. They want to speed forward. They want to leap forward. They want to fly. But are they flying in the wrong direction? Are they like Icarus, flying too close to the sun? And that's what happened to Lance, and everything collapses. Everything goes away. And so he becomes a cautionary tale. And in sports, like in business, it's not a rare thing. It's not a rare thing to find people doing things they ought not to be doing, and they hamstring their own career. They bring themselves down as paradigms of how to do it right. In every field of human excellence, there are people going about it wrong, and that's what these cautionary tales are all about. How to spot that in others, and even harder, how to spot it in ourselves quick enough to turn it around.
So What are we actually trying to maximize when we pursue excellence then? Is it performance? Is it potential? Is it character? Is it contribution? Is it flourishing? Is it goodness? What do you think, Tom?
It sounds like a grab bag of good things. I think we're trying to maximize our positive impact for good in the world. And we draw on these other things as needed and as is proper. But if we're always thinking about ourselves in however small or large a way, am I a force for good in the world? Yes or no? And how can I make my impact for good today? How can I make that good impact for good tomorrow? So maximizing our excellence always has to do, when done right, always has to do with what? Glory and honor? Well, honor first. And glory, if it comes, great, because we can inspire other people. But the honor will gain the trust of other people and will show whatever we do to be deeply satisfying and fulfilling for human beings to do, not just me grabbing mine as fast as I can.
In the book on page 85, on chapter 5, you share a common mentality of leaders today, one of moral abandonment, one where one thinks it, builds it, sells it, or and makes a big splash or takes the cash and walks away. So that abandonment. And what's the dichotomy here with excellence, honor, and this massive energy that's around, let's build it and sell it and just walk away from it.
Right. I mean, it becomes a game. There's a gamification of excellence. It becomes a, and it's funny. The only things that should be games are actual games. When anything else becomes gamified, politics, medicine, business, anything, stuff goes wrong. There are things that are supposed to be games: basketball, football, soccer. And the odd thing is when they become businesses, things start going wrong. It's like, let's have our games and let's have our other things, and let's don't try to, create these hybrids. It becomes very problematic. But you're right. I mean, the build it, sell it, walk away mentality has entered into too much of human life, even relationships, even raising children, even you're gonna produce something, then you're gonna walk away, whether it's physically or whether it's mentally, emotionally. I see this with Zuckerberg. I see this with Elon Musk. I see this with a lot of people who kind of sit in uneasy ways in our minds, who accomplish a lot of stuff, but they morally walk away from some of the consequences, some of the aspects and implications. And no, we're not going to talk about that. And even when they stick with the venture, whether it's Tesla or SpaceX or whatever, if they're still there, they haven't walked away physically, but they walked away emotionally or morally from a lot of the consequences of the culture that they've built and what it is they do. So much of responsibility is about ownership.
Yeah.
Not just, I'm going to build it, sell it, walk away. It's like, I'm going to bring something good into the world. And if I end up having to go and do something else next, I'm going to make sure that the right person's in place to be a good steward of what I brought into the world, and they will bring it to the next level. So in that chapter, I kind of sort out, when you do have to walk away from something that you've brought into the world, do you do it right? Or do you do it rashly and precipitously and selfishly? We have too many people doing it the wrong way. And so once we sort that out, we can say, okay, there's some things we should stick with. And there's some things that we're better off not sticking with. There's some founders who are not good leaders over the long term. They're great entrepreneurs, they're great at startups, but they're not good at managing the long term. So yeah, turn it over to somebody else, but make sure you turn over to them a masterpiece, not a mess.
And so this leads me into all this wisdom you're sharing and more, because early in the book you introduce AI too. And I'm going to bring it forward to one of the things right now today everyone is dappling with. They're not sure about. There's tons of uncertainty. Artificial intelligence plus ancient insights. So
Yeah.
you bring in this new framework.
Yeah.
And you introduce it very early on. And I love the juxtaposition that you bring here, because it represents an extraordinary new capability with while the other represents thousands of years of accumulated human wisdom. Are we becoming technologically more capable of speeding up than we were? I mean, is wisdom going away because we're so busy being so fast? And can Socrates and Aristotle and the Stoics and the others, their voices that you've brought into this book, teach us this, that technology can never do that? Talk about this dichotomy and this beautiful framework that you've
Yeah,
opened up
it's
here.
funny. AI 2, AI squared, AI in collaboration with AI, artificial intelligence, ancient insights. I first said that to an AI founder, and he said, "You need to trademark that phrase right away." I said, "Look, we've got the technology. We need the telos. We've got the power. We need the purpose. One without the other is problematic." Now, there've been news articles about AI companies, Anthropic and others, hiring philosophers, philosophy PhDs, and it's usually about training AI in alignment with the highest human values. How can we make sure that AI won't go rogue? Which they're so far they're not doing such a great job, because as of a week or two ago, we got reports about some AI agents engaged in all kinds of lying and deception and doing things they weren't supposed to do, and colluding with each other to get it done. It's like we're creating super smart thieves. And so I think we really need to anchor all of our new technological efforts in ancient wisdom about how things work well, before we just try to start making things work fast. We need to be, purpose needs to keep pace with power. Money and profit have been the focus of business for a long time. I think meaning and purpose ought to be just as important, or the focus on money and profit is going to go wrong, as we see it doing with crony capitalism, with capitalism that begins to look more like gangsterism. A real corruption of Adam Smith's vision for how we best work together well in the world. And that was in Aristotle. Adam Smith was a philosopher and wrote a book about the virtue theory of the moral sentiments and virtues 12 years before he wrote his foundational book about capitalism. We need to get back to those foundations, those moral foundations, and foundation in character, not just on the part of what we train the machines in, but on the part of the people who are actually developing the machines. I think
So can we be or become wise enough for what we're creating?
I hope so, right? Because right now we're developing platforms that allow us to do great good or great evil on a massive scale. In the past, you go back in human history, go back centuries, go back millennia, even go back decades, the amount of evil a person could do, the amount of damage was pretty limited. How far can you ride that horse to burn another village, right? There were limits. But now in seconds, things could impact the entire world, and forever. So we have to understand the importance. Wisdom has been almost a forgotten word. It's been a weak word. A power has been a strong word. Wisdom has been a weak word. Well, the funny thing is, it's the other way around, because power without wisdom is the most dangerous thing in the world. And only wisdom can help us to do it right, whether it's how we use our money, how we use our power, how we use our fame or celebrity. As we record this, we're a day away from the news that Dolly Parton just died. She was a person who used her fame, who used her money, who used whatever power she had to do good in the world, for children, for vaccines, for all kinds of things. She didn't parade it. She didn't announce it. She just went to work trying to use her homespun wisdom in all the right ways. And see, that's the thing. She grew up in a poor family in Appalachia. She didn't go to Harvard. Wasn't a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford, but she cultivated real wisdom, which, Plato didn't go to Harvard or Oxford or Yale either. There weren't those kind of institutions in their time, but they cultivated wisdom in their own hearts, in their own souls. And so can we in our time. It's never too late. As long as we're living and breathing and working, we can begin to cultivate wisdom. So I started, as you know, 2 years ago, Wisdom Weekend retreats here in Wilmington, North Carolina, on the beach at Whitesell Beach, bringing people together from all over North America, in every kind of walk of life, every age, from their teens and 20s up to their late 80s. People who do everything: an actor, a filmmaker, a CEO, FBI counterterrorism SWAT team guy, Treasury agent, educators, doctors, everybody imaginable to cultivate wisdom together. And it's something so important that I do it now as often as I can. We do it, 2 to 3 to 4 times a year. And it's in that, and it's not just in that room Friday evening to Sunday noon in that hotel. It's the relationships that continue on beyond those retreats where we continue to cultivate each other with wisdom. We ask each other difficult questions. We help each other out. One of the women who came to a retreat a year or two ago, she started mentoring one of the young women at the retreat, a college student. She always has three young women in her life that she mentors, and she took on that student as a lifetime mentorship. That's the way we cultivate wisdom with each other, right? Well, you can read a book, it can get it started. I hope the Frankenstein Factor really gets it started. But if you'll go to tomvmorris.com, which you have on the screen, and /retreats, learn about these retreats, come to one. Some people have come to 3 or 4 already. One filmmaker is coming back to retreat number 5 in October 16th, as we speak today. It's a wonderful thing to be with each other. One of the AI founders, who's a very wise man, and we never hear about him in the news because he's so wise. He's not getting in any kind of trouble. He came to one of the retreats and said, Tom, you're doing something that's vitally important for our world right now. In a world going rapidly virtual, you're bringing people together physically proximate with each other, present, looking in each other's eyes, taking a walk with each other on the beach, spending a weekend immersed in wisdom, and these relationships are going to continue. You are building a community of wisdom that's going to benefit every industry, every walk of life, every family represented in these rooms and in their communities. And I hope he's right about that.
And he is. And having been to one of yours and going to others, I will say I feel the richest in those dialogues, in the presence of these others who are thoughtful, who are mindful, who are curious. My gosh, is the curiosity just wide open, and the perspectives and the conversations and the level of intellect and research that gets brought to the table, and understanding and compassion and empathy. And it's such a powerful, let's put power in this place here. That is the true essence of power, that collective
it is.
energy.
And I'll still remember one retreat where on one end of the table was 3 teenagers, all college students, and the other end of the table were 3 guys in their late 80s. And the guys said to me at one point, the older guys, these kids are so smart. And the teenagers said to me on a different occasion that weekend, these old guys are so smart. And it's like, when does this ever happen that you're around the table representing 6 decades of life or 7 decades of life? Maybe you're at a family reunion where the conversation goes as deep as, what's Uncle George doing this weekend? Why couldn't he come? How about the kids? Are they at school? No, we're around the table talking about true success or the gift of uncertainty, or we're talking about leadership and limits, or we're talking about stoicism or coming up meaning and purpose. We're talking about really deep things, but we're hearing from everybody around the table. We're all like little bees going to every flower to get that nectar, to get that insight, that wisdom that we might not see. At my age of 74, I'm glad to have a 20-year-old give me her perspective, because it all matters.
It all matters. It does. Wow. Tom, throughout this book, you've taken us from Frankenstein's laboratory through ancient philosophy into literature that's profound, into psychology, the neuroscience, business at best, politics, leadership, and ultimately, I hope and I believe everybody that's read this and all the reviews I've read about this is that we find it in ourselves.
Yeah.
If someone's listening to us and wants to pursue a great ambition, to build something, to lead something, to change something, or to become something, what should they examine themselves? How should they examine themselves before they begin that journey?
Well, you just held up my favorite mirror, My favorite mirror to look at, you tell people, go look at yourself in the mirror. Well, this sometimes is the mirror because it's seeing what people have said before us, the wise advice, the guidance, and the guardrails they've given us. We can recognize ourselves as needing more of that guidance or needing more of those guardrails. And I say, test yourself against the best ideas ever. Um, don't just test yourself against what people are happening to do around you right now, what you're reading in today's paper or in today's feed on your Facebook or LinkedIn or what. Test yourself against the greatest ideas of all time, the greatest cautionary tales, the greatest examples. Yeah, look at Aristotle, look at Plato, look at Socrates, but also look at the people Mary Shelley talks about. Look at the people Sinclair Lewis or Somerset Maugham talked about. They wanted us to warn us about ways in which really smart, talented people can go very wrong. We don't want to be those people who wake up only at the end of our lives saying, oh my God, I did everything wrong. We want to be people who correct ourselves along the way with that inner responsibility, with that accountability to the greater good, because we're here to make a difference for good. And if we're doing anything else, we're going to derail ourselves real quickly.
Gratitude is big in that space as well. And I often find that as people journey, and because there's going to be bumps and bruises, there's going to be ups and downs, there's going to be change, there's going to be challenges and circumstances. In all of those moments, find the place and start with gratitude. I think is big, and I've learned that from you, and I read that in almost all of your books. It comes into play. So, what does it mean to live and to lead in excellence a truly good life? So let's now shift it into the good life, into
Yeah.
flourishing, and what that means for you as a public philosopher now who is influential. You do have that not only personal basis of power, you have a strong organizational basis of power, in that you're highly networked, highly connected. And I say this with the utmost respect, Tom, in that the messaging that you bring forth for people is this continuous opportunity to get curious and to open up into this goodness. So,
Yeah.
what does it mean to live and lead a truly good life?
It means not to be caught up chasing the wrong things. It's about avoiding everything that shines and sparkles. Appreciate those things from a distance, but they don't have to dominate our lives. It means looking at the inner things is always more important than the outer things, because if the outer things aren't properly rooted in the inner things, like truth, beauty, goodness, unity, like the qualities of courage and justice and self-control that the Stoics talked about. Um, if we pursue the right things and cultivate the right things in the right ways, then whatever goals we take on as part of our mission in the world can be incorporated into living a good life. We don't have to postpone the good life just to get some big things done. We live the good life as we're doing the right things in the right ways. And so it's never, okay, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to sacrifice everything that really matters to me so that I can provide for myself and my family. And then eventually I can live the good life. No, live the good life now. And those things will come about as side effects. If we're living with the virtues, with what the philosophers call the inner virtues, we will see their outer results in ways that couldn't otherwise have appeared. And we will be living the good life as a good life every step of the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say enough. You need to connect with Tom on LinkedIn. You need to go to tommorris.com and you need to visit his website and take an hour to peruse his website. It's full of knowledge and wisdom and
I
information.
just realized I needed to put a V in there. TomVMorris.com. V is for Victor. TomVMorris.com.
Well, let's Tom
I don't
V
want people.
Morris.
I don't want people at some baseball player's site or maybe
Let's
he's
get
good
that
too.
corrected
That's
right
it.
now
That's
at
it.
this
That's it.
moment.
And so
Yes.
there's an about page where they can just hit and connect with me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, other places. And there's a retreat page. They'll see at the top left, at the top index. There's a thing about retreats where they can find about that, but they can explore what I've done in the past, what I'm doing now. They can look at my books. We try to keep it updated. Some people have said it's like the Amazon jungle going into that website because there's so many pages and parts of pages, but you don't have to go, you don't have to track the Amazon. You can just look for the stuff that you're interested in, connect with me, and let's keep philosophizing.
I agree, and you do it daily on LinkedIn. You offer plenty of posts, and so please connect with Tom. Tom, I just want to say, as always, I enjoy these open dialogues with you. This is just another exceptional book. I think it complements the others that are definitely there. I do look forward to the next book, and I hope one of the next book it takes this and
Mm-hmm.
moves it into
Yeah, I think we
and
will.
it brings forth, yes, I hope that that's the next opportunity. I
There's
don't
no
know.
grand plan, but I just learned to listen to the muse. The muse knows what she's doing. So whatever book the muse suggests to me next will be the next one I start. I have a feeling it may be connected with the Meaning and Purpose retreat that we're going to do October 16th and do again probably on December 4th. So anybody who comes to that retreat is participating in the creation of the next book of philosophy.
Tom, I'm full of appreciation and gratitude. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you, my
Yeah,
friend.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us for Maximize Excellence. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe on YouTube, share it with your network, and join us again for another inspiring discussion with leaders who are shaping the future. Until next time, maximize excellence.